Hello and welcome to my podcast Up Here Total Glow, your podcast for your body, mind, and soul to support, guide, and empower you to uncover your most glowing, healthiest, and feel good version of you. I am super excited that you are here because if you ask me, there's nothing that looks and feels better. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Marina Pearson. Marina is a best-selling author and speaker, and she shares how you too can break free of people-pleasing tendencies. She speaks about abundance and why abundance is an important foundation in our life. She also speaks about how to manifest long-lasting relationships that are uniquely right for you. This is a beautiful interview and an absolute must listen for you if you are ready to live your best life and have a beautiful relationship with yourself and others without any people-pleasing tendencies. Please enjoy. Here she is, the amazing Marina Pearson.
Can you hear me?
We are having a little bit of technical issues. Hopefully this is just the beginning and getting better from here. Yeah, now this is better. So did you say that you had an amazing start into the day? Is that what you said? Or am I making this up?
Well, I have had an amazing time start into the day, but that's not what I said. So
Okay. I would love for you to introduce yourself. Who is Marina and what lights you up?
So I am many things, in fact. My roles in life, because ultimately who I am is very different to what I do, because I feel like it's really important to often we go, people ask you, what do you do? And then you go, I am. And so I like to make that distinction first and foremost, because for me, anything that I do is an expression of who I am, but it's not who I am.
Love it.
So I, my roles are mother, investor, and guide for women. So I'm also an author. I've also authored 3 books, one of which was translated into 5 different languages.
Wow.
So for me, the work I do with women and the writing that I do has always been sort of that sort of outlet of creative expression for me, a connection to the divine. And then really kind of not what my day job is, but where I also tend to focus a lot is in growing my wealth. And for me, I've come to see that as a beautiful spiritual practice. Um, there's always like a tendency to belittle or in lots of spiritual communities where, oh no, can't charge for this, can't do that. I have seen that actually the journey of any person that's building something and where money's involved, it becomes a spiritual practice. So I spend a lot of my time doing that too. And then I love to go into nature and spend time with my dog and walking these beautiful spaces that are available to me here. And yeah, I'm a mother as well, so all of it and everything in between.
I love it. And I can relate to so many things you said. Yeah, wealth. So in yoga philosophy or in Ayurveda, it's actually one of the foundations of creating a healthy life. So I do think there's a lot of misunderstanding, and I love what you totally said. And I wonder whether the misunderstanding is because when you do something that you're called to do, when you love it, it doesn't feel hard. So, and in our society, we might have come to think that work is hard. So I'm just wondering whether there is a connection or not. But this aside, that's just me thinking out loud. I would love to dive deeper into your way of empowering women. And also, is there a backstory? Who has empowered you, or have you empowered yourself? I would love to hear your backstory. Or all of
So
it.
that's a great question. Yeah, that's a really great question, and I think it's a mixture of all of it, and it's an interesting journey for me because looking back on where it started this journey of mine started. Well, it started way before I even knew that it had begun, actually. Um, I don't know if you resonate with that.
Yes, I do.
I had no vocabulary at the time to understand what it was. And I remember sort of my first initiation into what I would call connection to God's spirit was, or just in general growth, was at the age of 21. And I had had a really difficult teenage life. It involved a lot of insecurity. It involved a lot of darkness. It involved eating disorder. It involved feeling that I didn't fit anywhere. I felt awkward. And I didn't really have a great experience of boys and men and my sexuality. So for me, it was a really difficult time. And I had a tendency to want to all kind of just keep it all in and not share it with anybody. So by the age of 21, I was really out of balance, and I basically took action to take my life, and it was a wake up call.
Yeah.
And so I knew that there was something that I needed to do, and so I spoke to a family member who said to me, you know, you have to create your inner world. Now that was a really weird thing at the time for me, because I was like, what inner world?
Yeah.
I didn't
What are you talking about?
Yeah, right. All out there, no? And so that was the beginning. And I remember reading The Tale of Piglet and The Tale of Pooh, which was Taoism through the characters, which I thought was brilliant. It was really well written. And it really brought spiritual principles into something that I could understand at the age of 20 something, you know, I was still really young. And I then sort of got curious about other books like the Magical Way of the Warrior, I think it was called, and then Message Down Under, and then The Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. All of these books were pointing to the same thing. And then, of course, I stopped for a bit, and I really it took me about a year to feel completely different.
Mm.
And
it's not a long time, actually.
No, but for me, it was it had taken me to the next step, or the next part of that journey, and just raised my awareness and consciousness. But that didn't end. So over time, I kind of lost sight of all of that and went back into my old ways. And 10 years later, I found myself in a divorce and having a really hard time. Again, I was kind of thrown into the depths of darkness once more. And each time it was very much like sort of an initiation into a lighter, more heartfelt version of myself. And it was at that point that I thought, okay, I really needed to explore this. And a friend of mine gave me a book at the time called Imago. It was about imago therapy, and it was all about how you attract relationships. I got really involved in that. So that was the first time And I remember thinking to myself, my God, you know, when I was at the workshop thinking, I'm not the only one that's crazy then. Because at the time I was always surrounded by people that never really talked about how they felt. They never really talked about what was going on for them. And I thought it was just me. But at this workshop, I realized actually, no, that there is an entire industry, that there is this whole sector of life of our population that actually does want to explore how they feel, does want to understand what's going on for them. And I just felt like I'd come home. And so that was really the start. That was without giving too much away in terms of my age, that was like 15, 16 years ago now. And that was, as I said, that was the start of that journey. And so I journeyed with all sorts of things, and you name it, I've probably done it actually. I did loads of seminars in London at the time, hypnotherapy. And then I somehow got caught into the ascension route, which was all about we are one, we all create our reality through our thinking. And anything that we feel is created via our story and our thought process. Now, at the time, that just blew my mind, because I was giving power away to everything else still, because that's basically been my major pattern in life, which is giving my power to the things outside of me, not believing or not thinking that I have actually the capacity to do it myself, or ultimately to really kind of be guided by my own wisdom. And so it would come out even with my work that I would do with others. So it'd be like, they have the answer, I don't. And then suddenly it was just like, no, you do. And so I got really involved in this for quite a while. I worked with mothers who were stressed, who ran businesses, and helped them to stress less and live more for a while. And then COVID hit, and I had to go back into retreat, because I, at the time, had another major initiation, and this one was the one that really kind of blew me completely wide open. Not that the other ones didn't, but this one was the one where I became really clear that I had kind of not spiritually bypassed, but just a huge blind spot for me, which was this people pleasing, nice girl identity that I was carrying, that I hadn't even contemplated. Because for me, I was always told I was very expressive. And I am expressive. I'm half Spanish. I have a way to express. I can't really hide my emotions. It's really difficult for me to do that. And so I didn't understand that I really struggled to express myself authentically in my more intimate relationships, specifically my relationships with men. And it was a complete it was a complete surprise to me.
Wow.
At the age of 43, 44, that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was going on for me. And I hadn't put it together, but I knew that there was something in it for me that I needed to explore. And so and it came as another breakup, and I was so triggered. And every time I was like, why is it that anytime a man leaves my life, I feel so triggered, and I feel like I can't carry on. And I realized that there was still that wounding around the abandonment wound, that I felt abandoned, that I didn't feel like I had what it took to be on my own, even though from the outside in, you know, I was bringing up a son pretty much on my own, and I was doing it for myself, and I was able to, you know, feed myself and go on holiday and all of those things. But it didn't feel that way on the inside. And so it was funny, because at the time, and then so I got initiated into now what I call my queen. She had to come online at some point, and that was that was huge, because I was presented with a whole bunch of circumstances that were asking me, calling me into her, but really to stand my ground and say no, in spite of the cost. And it's probably the most difficult thing that I've ever experienced. It was literally a gauntlet of about 3 years where life was like, right, it's time. And it was one thing after the other. And I kept saying, no, 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 no. This is not okay for me. I don't care what you think. This is actually my aligned truth. And I need to do this in a way that feels heartfelt and but true to me. Because honestly, if somebody had said to me, "What is your truth?" I was like, I don't even understand the question. I was like, what? I don't even understand what that question means. And suddenly, even the word alignment, I was like, I'd never heard of that word. It probably had been in my awareness, but I'd completely missed it, because of course I wasn't aligned most of the time in what I was up to. A lot of my life was run by fear. A lot of my life was run by me wanting to please others and saying yes just to keep the peace. Specifically my husband, and also in my relationships, and the relationships I would attract were very much a mirror to all of that shadow part of myself that was sort of like kept under lock and key. And so I would invite men who were very angry. I would invite men into my space who I would have to mother, but also who had this point of being really nasty and narcissistic. And I had no understanding of this at all. And it wasn't until I asked myself this question of like, what am I attracted to? It was usually what comes into my life, but ultimately it was like what I attract, not what am I attracted to.
Wow.
It's so subtle, but it was such a major revelation for me, because I was like, well, hang on a second, I hadn't even asked myself that question. What seems to come into my life, versus me going, well, hang on a second, let me be the one to be the gatekeeper of what comes in. Because I was like, everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
And I suddenly thought, well, no, because I was paying the price in the end. Like I had to pay the price in so many ways, financially, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And I was like, I'm done doing this. But it wasn't until I started to do the work of reclamation, which happened about 3 years ago now, where I joined a course called Waking the World Feminine. And that was the start. And then I did something called Waking the Wild Medicine, which was a year-long journey of what is your medicine? What is your unique medicine to the world? And for many years, I'd felt like I was this, New York City cab. I was a coach, and you could pick me up on the high street, and but there would be another one that would be just coming along the way, and I really didn't know what my value was to the world. I'd never really contemplated that. I never really understood it. I'd never really owned it or reclaimed it. And it was that year-long process that was brutal. I mean, it was brutal. But it was brutal because I had to look at all of these patterns that I had been playing out in my life that I had just not wanted. In some way, it wasn't even conscious, actually. It's not like I didn't not want to take a look. It was just that I realized that going the ascension route had completely and utterly blinded me from all of that stuff. But as a result, and as I journeyed with it, I realized that my medicine here for women was to help them, support them in being able to embody, not just express, but embody their truth, embody their desires, and being able to certainly, sorry, the wire's coming out of my computer. Let me plug myself in. Embody and align themselves to their authentic self, but ultimately they're being able to do this in their relationships with men, their intimate relationship with men. And so I started with the Unshackled Expression Circle last year. And what's come as a result is an unfolding really of just starting with that and seeing where that would take me. And then it sort of transpired that the next piece was really about them trusting themselves. And then finally, one I'm launching now, it's called the Unshackled Abundance Circle, which is really about women who overgive. And of course, this is a big one, but they do this because they're looking for appreciation. And so what I realized, when women are looking for appreciation outside of themselves, when they're looking for approval and validation outside of themselves, and when they are looking for safety outside of themselves, they will then go into certain types of patterns of ways of being that take them away from their truth and their desires. So I realized that there was a triangle model that I could create that would really help women to understand which one of these, it may be all of them, but there may be one that actually really speaks to them more than the others. And for me, certainly the ones that I had a lot going on with was safety. So that usually, when we're looking for safety outside in the other, what happens is we repress our truth and our desires. We repress it. So we basically end up being reactive or not saying. But what that does is it creates a lot of resentment. And then, but when we realize that the safety is actually inside, and that actually all of it is created from the inside, we're able to be much more expressive and share our truth and desires in spite of how it will land with the other person. And so each of them has their own flavor. And ultimately, when we look for approval, women can be very much of the ilk of giving and giving and giving and giving, especially emotionally. Like I've done this. I don't know if anybody's listening, any of your listeners might have resonate with this, where you get into relationships to fix the other person, or you end up being their therapist. And so all you do is listen and listen and listen, and you feel needed and you feel appreciated. But ultimately, if that appreciation is not given back, that's when you start to resent again, because it's conditional. It's conditioned on X, Y, Z. So I've also been a culprit. Well, I've also actually done this where I have overgiven financially. So picking men that probably didn't have their finances in order and that couldn't necessarily look after me in the way that I wanted. But at the time, it was like, well, I don't even know what it doesn't matter, because love is what matters, right? So it would manifest itself there. And then finally, looking for approval and validation usually comes in the guise of losing themselves completely and abandoning themselves and not trusting themselves. And in so doing, they submit themselves to the other person's reality. And so they kind of lose sight of their values. They kind of lose sight of what they want. And so it kind of always comes back to you. The journey I always talk about with my clients is that this journey is about from them to you, from him to you, the I. And I think as women, we've been taught that, thinking about yourself is so selfish. And it's like, no, actually, it's really important.
Foundation of everything.
Yeah, totally. And so it is a journey from the head to the heart. It's a journey from outside in. It's a journey from you to me, from them to I, because a lot of the time when especially women who want to please, what they've lost sight of is their total their inner world, right? So it's all about the outside, and it becomes this way of being that allows them to not feel, because it's always about the other person. When if I'm focusing on the other person, I don't necessarily have to feel what I am experiencing. So a lot of my women don't even know. They're like, I don't know what I feel, because they don't understand their emotional inner world. It's like, I don't know if I'm feeling anger, or is this sadness, or is this rage, or, you know, they haven't even got a name for it.
Yeah.
So my journey with them is to reclaim that for themselves. And I call it, the brand is called The Unshackled Woman, because it's really about unshackling the people-pleasing chains that they have and that they've created. And what it is just to be basically opening their heart. Because when we are in people-pleasing mode, as much as we're nice and kind and being, you know, that mask, ultimately our heart's not open. Our heart is open when we're really being able to share our vulnerability. And it always comes back to that. When the feminine is being vulnerable, that is when we win and everybody else wins. Now, vulnerability isn't something, it's not being reactive. Vulnerability is being able to say, I feel this way. It's being able to appreciate. It's being able to share when you feel scared. It's being able to share when you feel worried. It's being able to understand your own emotional landscape that a lot of my women have lost sight of. But the masculine really loves to have a woman by his side that is vulnerable, because he feels through us. His heart is our heart. I remember having an insight into this and realizing, somebody asked me, what is our role in the relationship? And the answer that came through was beautiful for me, because I didn't know this at the time, but obviously I got the answer, which was that we are the heartbeat of the relationship. Now, if our heart is closed, it's really hard for it to flow, right? So I open, women can't come to me, have their heart open. So it's more of a gift for them than it is for anybody else, to be honest, because they're the ones living with that heart.
Beautiful. So amazing. There was so much in that. So what I mainly hear is that I can't really say it in so many facets, how you have described your journey and what you're doing now, how you're empowering women. So I will just say it in very simple words. So what I heard is that you truly went sometimes by initiation on this journey back to your truest goddess self, which was a revelation again and again. And now you are actually doing the same for women. You are empowering them back to come home to their goddess self. And what really struck most with me, I feel that society is created in a way that leads us away from ourselves. So I can very much relate to so many things you said, personally and professionally. And I feel all the distraction, all the going outside of us, all those solutions outside of us. Take that pill, get the bigger car, do it, like you are happy. Once you've achieved that, it's all outside of us all the time. Go getter and do it fast. And I do think that yeah, it takes courage to actually stop and listen and go like, is this aligned with me? Who am I in all of this? And then going into the other direction and really finding your true self again and being empowered. So it sounds amazing what you do. Where can my audience find you?
So they can find me on www.marinapearson.com, and they can take a people-pleasing quiz there to see where they are on the journey. Mm-hmm. And it's for women who have had challenging relationships in the past, and who are possibly scared of getting themselves into another relationship where they feel that they will lose themselves, or if they're already in a relationship where they find themselves playing out these people-pleasing patterns. And you can usually tell because it usually comes out in not expressing their truth. Yeah. So because they don't want to rock the boat, because they don't want to cause hurt for the other person, they're scared of getting it wrong, they're scared of being too much. Yeah. And the way I work is slightly different. I mean, I take a lot of the polarity work that I've done, but for me, the most important thing is to hold a lot of these concepts lightly, and for women to explore what their truth is in all of this, because it's very easy for us to talk about polarity work. You know, the guy needs to pay for everything, as an example, right? Well, I'm not partial to that particularly, because I'm a woman that has money. Where do I fit in all of this, right? And there are women that don't, and who then end up depending on the guy because that's what they've been told they need to do, because ultimately he's supposed to pay for everything. And so for me, the most important thing of all is for women to know where their decisions are coming from. If they're coming from wounding, or if they're coming from sovereignty. If it's coming from sovereignty, that they're like, no, I want a guy who is going to take care of me, and that feels really aligned, then brilliant. And for another woman, it might be, I don't want a guy looking after me. I'm really happy with being able to like completely and utterly be independent, and then come together with somebody that I can partner with. You know, to create their own weird and wonderful version of their unshackled relationship. So the other thing that, as I said, I'm running right now is the Unshackled Abundance Circle. So they can look into that. It's www.marinapearson.com/unshackled abundance. Awesome.
Where can we find your books?
So they can find them on Amazon, and there's two of them actually. There is Goodbye Mr. X, which is all about overcoming heartbreak, and then The Joy of Being is another one I published about 5-6 years ago now, which is for mums in business to stress less and live more.
Awesome. I will put all of this into the show notes. I wish I had more time to talk to you. I absolutely love what you do. To finish, could you give my audience 3 golden nuggets, just 3 fairly short pieces of wisdom that they can take with them to feel empowered here and now?
Well, these 3 nuggets would effectively be for anybody that's struggling or has struggled with being able to share what's true for them in their relationships. And so the first one would be that you can be loved for being all of who you are.
Beautiful.
The second one would be that men are aching for women to embody their truth and their desires. They are aching for it because we live in a world where most women have been taught that that's actually not the case. But if you tell a guy what you want, how you want it, in the way that you want it, he will, if he's a good one, he will lap it up. And finally, make it easy for the guy to win. I have seen this time and time again, that when I make it easy for my guy to win, everybody wins. So by being able to express what I want, he does it, and then I appreciate him for it. And it just, it fuels the control, and what it does is more of what you want, and he feels good, and so he wants to do more of that. And letting the guy know that he's done well. But for that, we need to learn to be able to get clear on what we want. So get clear on what you want, and then express it, and then appreciate.
I love it. It's beautiful. Absolutely empowering. And I am certain that it's not only me who can totally resonate with so many things that you, and here I just lost her. Marina, are you back?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that I'm sure that I'm not the only one who can resonate with what you said. I think it's absolutely empowering. I love what you do. And I would love to have you back and dive deeper into another conversation. Thank you so much, Marina, for
that would be amazing.
For making our world a happier, healthier, and more empowered place. Thank you so much.
If you love and enjoy my podcast, then please do me a favor and help me to make our world a healthier, happier place. And you can do so by just sharing my podcast with one other person who you believe would greatly benefit from it. I know that you were born to live your best life and to feel absolutely amazing in your precious body, your brilliant mind, and your boundless soul. So what are you still waiting for? Please make sure you do. I'm your biggest cheerleader. Keep glowing. Much love.